27 million. It's not just a number, it's the amount of slaves that are still in the world today. Slavery is often thought to be a thing of the past, but it still exists. There are different types of slavery, and modern slavery is some ways like classic slavery, but in some ways it's different. And also, it's all over the world. So first of all, we'll define what slavery is. According to CNN, their definition of slavery is slavery occurs when one person completely controls another person using violence or threat of violence to maintain control, exploit them economically, and pays them nothing. They cannot walk away. So, even though there's one definition for slavery, there are multiple different types of slavery. First of all, there's bonded labor, which is basically someone will loan someone maybe money, and the only way that they can pay them back is to work for them. But they'll increase the interest to something that they'll never be able to pay back, so they're indebted to them and have to be their slave. Then second, there's forced labor, and forced labor is just what it sounds like. They force them, usually by threat of violence or by violence, to have them be their slave. And then lastly, there's human trafficking, and it is basically where they transport people and then force them into labor. There are 78% of the slaves are labor slavery, and then 22% is in select slavery. 55% of slaves are women and girls, and 45% are men and boys. 26% of slaves are children. The types of slavery are much like they were originally. There's also some differences between slavery now than what it was. There are more slaves now in the world today than there ever have been in human history. Slavery generates about $32 billion a year for the traffickers, whereas back when there was the transatlantic slave trade, they made about $618 million over the entire time of that. Slaves cost $40,000 in classic times in today's money, whereas they cost about $90 on average today. Slavery is not legal in any place in the world, but it exists everywhere. So where are they? Africa has the most slaves per capita, and then Asia follows. In countries in Africa, like Mauritania, 4% of their population is slaves. Then Haiti is the second most per capita slaves as far as countries go. India has 14 million slaves, which is over half of all the slaves in the world. The U.S. has 60,000 slaves, and 14,500 and 17,000, between 14,500 and 17,500 slaves are trafficked through America every year. Russia has over 1 million slaves, and in Moscow alone, there's between 20 and 30,000 children prostitutes on the street. In Brazil, there's 25,000 slaves. Pakistan has 1.8 million. China has 150 million. They work in places like brothels, farms, mines, plantations, factories, and construction sites. Slavery is a lot like it was in the fact that it's brutal still. They're whipped and they're in bondage, much like this chain which bonds them to their master per se. Slavery is not just something in the history books. It is here and it is now. So there are different types of slavery. There are commonalities between slavery in the past and slavery now. And slavery is everywhere.